place where classical music happens. This is a brand new live project with IDAGIO. It's been in the pipelines for a while. We've been trying it and thinking about launching this. It seems like a pretty good time. We're all at home. We all have a different concentration on the media world now. So this IDAGIO project, IDAGIO Live, is to invite artists, me, into your home. As you're watching this, if you have questions, you can Twitter, you can write them in on your YouTube Live, whatever we are, send us an email. And as we gain momentum in this series, we can answer your questions if you like. And specifically, I will be returning, but I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. This is a very exciting project. It's a wonderful, completely unrehearsed, prompted, welcome to my library. Let's talk about Gustav Mahler. Tonight, I thought I would introduce to you a little bit of where my mind is at with Gustav Mahler, and especially Lieder eines fahrenden Gesellen, the songs of the wayfarer. As you well know, I've sung them a lot over the years. I love these pieces. I love the music of Gustav Mahler, and maybe it would be interesting to you to know why. Like everyone else, I think the music is just plain beautiful. The more you know about Mahler and the more you believe in how he tried to make life as an experience audible in musical elements, that becomes a pretty interesting and complicated and adventurous road to travel. With the fahrenden Gesellen, he wrote these quite early in his life. He was only 25 years old. He was born in 1860. These date from 1885, 1886. You're already going to hear melodies that really gestated into the first symphony. The most famous probably the Gam bam 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 ging heut morgen übers Feld, da noch auf den Gräsern hing, sprach zu mir der lustige Fink, and so forth and so on. It's a wonderful cycle about youth. And now we come to a couple of big points that are, one, Germanic literature, and second, certainly Mahler. The first about Germanic repertoire is this projection of humans, of their emotions into nature. We have an awful lot of music and an awful lot of poetry, awful lot of songs that are babbling brooks and chirping birds of various natures and certainly different colors, natural phenomenon that are referenced and become symbols or metaphors for our lives and our emotions or emotional state, or the emotional state of that person singing at that time. And the only thing I want to say is that's all wonderful, but emphasize that these are metaphors for human emotions, and nature doesn't actually care. A tree is a tree is a tree, a bird is a bird is a bird. What nature does is because it's natural and meant to be. And the use of the metaphor, I think, from the human side is that we would like to be like nature. We would like to believe that our spontaneous love, hate, euphoria, desire, longing, displacement, all belongs to the very natural scale of things. And when that doesn't work, because in fact we're humans, then we see how nature is askew. And this cycle is all about that. This cycle, then getting straight to the second point, which is Mahler's point, almost all of Mahler's music has some notion of journey in it. There is some emotional or even physical journey of the human being from state A to state B, or reflecting on various states as inevitably one goes from A to B. That might be more appropriate to Gustav Mahler. Mahler felt that music should capture a sense of time, a sense of evolving into the next moment from the previous moment you've heard. Strophic songs, meaning verses of the same verse reset, they seem like that sometimes with Mahler songs, but in fact they aren't. There's always some kind of development. And of course, his masterpieces are really far more through composed, as we call that, starting from point B and going to point C, as it were. Now, this journeyman, the Gesellen, is probably best translated as an apprentice. And the apprentice is even a metaphor. It's not necessarily an apprentice going from car shop to car shop. It's youth stumbling into maturity. And that's maybe a third point, if I can offer, to Germanic repertoire that have metaphors of death involved in them. Very often the physical death that is being described is not really a door closing death as we recognize it today. It's really more of a transcendence. It's more of a developing into something else, either another consciousness or another kind of person. More importantly, that death, it's the death of something that lived before. And in adolescence, it becomes the death of idealism. It becomes the death of naivety. It becomes the death of ideal love. And that's where we are with the fahrenden Gesellen, this wonderful traveling apprentice. And he starts the first song pretty despondent because he's probably the musician, like Schumann's musician now I just forgot the song. Whatever. The guy that's playing in the band for the wedding music, and the person getting married is the girl that he thought was his girlfriend. There's quite a bit of that in German literature, not happy moments. And that's a little bit where fahrende Gesellen comes from. In the second song with the famous theme that I already hummed to you, this is one of the most beautiful Mahlerian explorations of youthful living attempt to find one in nature. Most of the themes from the second movement show up in some part of the First Symphony, which comes right on the heels of fahrende Gesellen, really probably at the same time, gestating 86, 87, 88, 1886, 87, 88. Da 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 da. It's just fantastic music. And of course, at the end of that song, he says, well, no, that's all good for someone else, but not for me. The third is probably the most psychotic of all of the songs, in which he imagines a burning sword knife in his heart, obviously the rejection of the love that he had so hoped for. And he even hallucinates towards the end of the song of seeing her in the fields and hearing her laughter, which becomes almost a cackle. And at the end of the song, lays on his own bier and hopes for nothing but death itself to relieve him of this emotional pain. Very, very Sturm und Drang, very adolescent, very strong emotions. And out of that comes some of the most beautiful journey music, if you will, that was ever written for a song cycle. Pom, 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 die zwei blauen Augen von meinem Schatz. Pom, pom, pom. Really a funeral march, being marched to his own funeral from the rejection of his love and the inability to find one in nature or any solace in nature. And out of that comes one of the truly most magical moments in this cycle, but certainly also in the First Symphony, where you have Auf der Straße steht ein Lindenbaum, da hab ich zum ersten Mal im Schlaf geruht. In the First Symphony, it just becomes the whole string section in one of the most beautiful, euphoric, transcendent moments in all of music. And of course, this piece ends probably more with the feeling that this young boy leaned up against the tree willingly lets himself slumber into death. I think the death is far more important, again, to the metaphor. It's very similar to the Schubert cycles of Schöne Müllerin and Winterreise. Schöne Müllerin, certainly the boy lies down in the water. Winterreise is probably more Mahlerian in that I think it's far more about the journey of life and the death of naivety. These are just marvelous songs. And Gustav Mahler, I have found through the years, either I meet people that are quite passionate for Gustav Mahler or quite annoyed by Gustav Mahler. You very seldom find anyone that shrugs their shoulders and says, yeah, it's okay. I've always found people, oh, he just drives me crazy. And one of the answers I like to give, and some of my good friends actually can't really get their emotions in heads. They feel bombarded by Gustav Mahler sometimes. And I think in his symphonic music, if I can offer a perspective, it's a little bit like perhaps imagining yourself sitting at a dinner table, surrounded by people who's speaking a language you don't speak at all. Now you can get the rise and the fall of the emotional pitch, you can get the laughter, you can get the oh dear, that shouldn't have been said moment. You know, you can get a lot of things, but you don't actually have, you're not quite tuned in to exactly why that word, or in this case, musical element, that can be entertaining, that can be an emotional journey that is fun to take, but it also can be irritating because you want to know what's behind that. And that's what I always feel with Gustav Mahler's music. One is always preoccupied with what's going on behind that. Mahler very often spoke of what goes on between the notes, which is, as a musician, a whole world of wonder. Mahler, in his notes, in the music that we're reading, studying, leaves extreme detail at times. Most of the time, he's warning to his musician colleagues to be careful of what probably they would do. Don't slow down too much. Don't get too fast. Don't be too loud. I don't think I've ever heard him say, don't be too soft. I think there was something about soft music making that he really, really, really adored. It's very interesting that in this very famous theme of Der Straße steht ein, that we would think is just the essence of German romantic sentimental music, he writes in block letters across the phrase, nicht sentimental. That's fantastic, not sentimental. And then we come to a wonderful, wonderful German word called Wehmut, which is pain, courage through pain, courage, Mut, and Weh, pain. It's literally the smiling through tears, which if there was ever a description of the essence of romantic German literature, this would probably be it. And I keep referring to German literature. These songs come from and are coupled with Mahler's own texts from Des Knaben Wunderhorn, the youth magic horn, which was published in 1806 and 1808 in Heidelberg. These are wonderful collections of folk poetry that Achim von Arnim and Clemens Brentano collected from sources sometimes over 100 years old, as we say, oral traditions and handed to what my aunt sang, what my grandfather told me. And then these gentlemen, these young boys actually in school, in dedication to Goethe and to their great professor Herder, put these into poems. And so Mahler felt quite compelled whenever he was in the middle of Knaben Wunderhorn poems that he had the right to flesh out the essence of those folk poetries. In fact, he described himself very often as a sculptor with a chisel and a hammer, sculpting out that image that he wanted to create in musical essences as well as born from the literature references or the folk poetry. He's been criticized for not being true to the poems. This is not true in the sense of Des Knaben Wunderhorn. This is a real participation with the, if you will, preserving the very message of these folk poems, coupled with the music and the musical elements. And now we get to one of the final points, and that's the world of Schubert. Schubert started the whole thing off in 1814, 1815 by being the first composer to externally through music create an atmosphere, a happening, whether it's the rustling of winds or the flowing of water or the spinning wheel or the galloping horses, in which something deeply internal, psychological, and personal would transpire. Mahler takes that to a whole nother level at the end of the 19th century, simply through what music had developed over the last 55 or 60 years. But it is the same essential muse of Schubert and the relationship of events in our lives, our personal external journeys, and the internal digestion, if we have, of those emotional ups and downs within those journeys. That's the world of Lieder, quite frankly. It's a wonderful world. I hope that you're listening to the Lieder eines fahrenden Gesellen tonight will encourage you to venture into other songs as well. Start with Schubert, good place. you can't go wrong in Schumann's literature, but I'll be talking about that more over the next couple of weeks, if you don't mind, and if you join me. And if you've got some specific questions, send them in. I'd give it a shot to try and answer. It'd be my pleasure. Now, as you're listening to this or watching me on YouTube Live, there's a link below that you can go to my performance of this cycle right at the beginning of my career with the legendary Leonard Bernstein and the incomparable Vienna Philharmonic in that unbelievable golden Saal of the Musikverein in Vienna. This was a great moment in my life, an amazing partnership with one of the most incredibly interesting, intelligent musicians, human beings I've ever met in my entire life, Leonard Bernstein. Yeah, I'll tell you how Lenny Halector worked, a little story, and then I'll let you go. I'm a young guy. I've got myself prepared. By the way, the first time I ever sang this cycle was with Zubin Mehta's father in Los Angeles in the late 70s. Can you imagine? Meli Mehta and the Youth Symphony. It was fantastic, wonderful experience. So I knew the piece. I was so anxious to work with Lenny because there's really quite a bit of detail in the score. So I bound into his studio one Sunday morning for our rehearsal, and they said, "Oh, Lenny, fantastic! I can ask you all these questions I've been wanting to ask." I mean, you look at the first 4 bars. I mean, my goodness! In the piano version, it's in 4/4, but then the 2 bars are in 3. But then there's a trio. It's over a triplet on the second bar in the piano version, and in the orchestra version, and the first 4 bars are a quarter note to 60, and then when the boy sings, or 63, and when the boy sings, it starts in 60. Has not much of a difference. And oh my God, what is this for Mata mean on the bar line? I mean, literally with this kind of crazy energy. Well, it's Sunday morning. Lenny looks at me and he says, "So, let me ask you, have you ever been to a Jewish wedding?" "No." "Wow, diddle diddle die, 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 diddle diddle die, die, die. That's the music. And the boy playing, he's not happy. Now quit thinking and just tell me the story. Sing. And by the way, he's not happy because he's not the bridegroom." That was Lenny. In such casual, nonchalant moments, amazing, profound truths could come out. But what he really said was, be the music, tell the story. And that's what we do as musicians. I've enjoyed my time with you. I hope you have as well. I will be back because part of this IDAGIO Live, the place where classical music happens, we're also, and by the way, this is going to be every night. You'll need to check probably, well, it's going to be either 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening, 18 Uhr or 19 Uhr Central European time, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, which makes it noon or 1 o'clock in New York. And we could go all the way back through the time zones. I'll save you that. Every night, this is a new series. Every night, another artist, one of my colleagues, one of us, are going to talk to you like this and enjoy and invite you to participate in a music moment that has meant a great deal to us. On top of that, I'm starting next Tuesday, April 14, yes, April 14 at 7 o'clock. I'm always going to be 7 o'clock. Tom Hampson. We're going to start Tuesdays with Thomas, and I'm going to have a 20-minute, half an hour interview, conversation with a surprise guest each week. And you're going to be surprised and you're going to be happy. You might want to check this out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tuesdays with Thomas. Next one starting, first one on April 14 at 1900, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Eastern Time. Oh, I don't think, have I left anything out? I don't think so. I think we have it. Yes. So now click on your link. Enjoy Leonard Bernstein, die Philharmonic, Thomas Hampson, Lieder eines fahrenden Gesellen, and the amazing, unique voice of humanity, Gustav Mahler. Thank you very much for tuning in. IDAGIO Live, where classical music happens.